Welcome to the Hard-Won Wisdom Podcast with best-selling author Fawn Germer and corporate innovator Michelle Brigman. Come here weekly for career and life-changing conversations with some of today's most influential thought leaders, senior executives, and trailblazers who will share their mentoring wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Leadership Network.
Hi, I'm Fawn Germer.
And I'm Michelle Brigman.
And this is the Hard-Won Wisdom Podcast. People, networking. You all know you have to network, but so many people network the wrong way. And so the point today is stop networking like a wimp.
Woo, woo.
We all know, we've been hearing forever, you have to network. And I see people all the time going out there saying their elevator pitches and then sending these cold emails after to reconnect and getting nothing out of their network. What we want to do with this time on the podcast is show you how to go guerrilla as a networker, how to be effective and use that network so it makes you more successful and makes your life filled with more fun and friendship. So this is a great topic. It's one that I'm very passionate about. Michelle, you are a great networker.
Oh, I love it. But it took a while to get there, right? Because, I start out having all of this pressure and guilt, like I'm asking for something. And I think it's this big mindset shift, which I know we'll talk about, of going from, oh, I don't want to inconvenience or I don't want to overstep or offend, so I do nothing whenever it's just, you're missing the point. So I love whenever, I love to hear how we're going to talk about just what do we even mean when we say networking?
Well, right. What do we mean? We do not mean making a very impressive list of business contacts that you barely know, because that is useless. And before we get going, I do have to give this one caveat, because some people are very uncomfortable networking, and I'm an introvert. A lot of people don't understand that or believe that. They see me on stage in front of 1,000 people and they think, oh, she's a big extrovert. No, I get my energy alone, and I don't especially love talking to strangers in a professional setting. But I've learned it's mandatory. And I interviewed Irene Rosenfeld years ago. She was then the CEO of Kraft. And she said this line, networking is working. And what that means is, isn't that good? What that means is networking is your job, but doing it the wrong way will get you nowhere. So the benefit of good networking is that you wind up with things like what you're listening to right now, as a friendship like Michelle and I have, because we mined our network and became friends. And like you've seen, many of my friends are on this podcast, and they're influential people who I met along the way. And I learned that the whole goal of networking is not to make contacts, it's to make friendships. Agreed?
That summed it up beautifully. It is about the relationship. It is about the relationship, not trading, a business card for a sale. That's, if you're going in like that, then you know what? You can feel uncomfortable because you're missing the whole point.
That's one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of LinkedIn.
Oh.
Okay, tell me, when you get people asking for you to add them as a contact, and they send one of those self-serving emails saying, please add me to your network. Can you just do this for me? You know what that reminds me of? Okay, so let's go way back. I'm in my 20s. I am a reporter, and part-time I am a professor at the University of North Florida, and I'm getting married. And this student of mine gives me this tray set as a wedding gift. And I was so touched by it. And she says, here. And I thought, oh, isn't that sweet? She loves me, and she gave me this. And then she said, you're going to be really good for my career.
Oh, that was very
right. And that
thoughtful and giving.
Right. But and revealing. And so that when you are making a connection, you have to understand there is no quid pro quo. You are not doing it to give to get. You're just building a relationship. And then once you have a relationship, the give and get is just natural.
Oh, 100. I love to have that conversation of lead in or close around. Tell me how I can help you. What can I help you? What is it you need right now? Or what can I help you with right now? And it's fascinating to me, even if I'm, earlier in my career, junior to the person I'm doing outreach for, because maybe I want career advice, but going in with how do I help you or what can I help you with now? How often they have something they are struggling with. And I immediately feel that I'm not just, again, taking, I am giving. And that begins to build trust. And again, to the point you were just making of builds a relationship that can be very long lasting. So don't ask without offering.
Well, and a lot of times you literally have nothing really that they need. And when I was starting out as an author, I wrote to the person. I'm telling my story, and you'll hear.
But do you think that they don't?
There are some that let me tell my story.
All right.
All right. So I'm starting out as an author, and I'm starving, and I've bet my life on this book. I've quit my job for it. I was rejected everywhere. It was an ugly story about to come into Cinderella's moment. And right as my book came out, the first day I got my book, the next day was 9/11. So my book tour got canceled, and I had to figure out how I was going to market and sell that book with my publisher not being behind it. And I had lived in Denver for many years, and that was home of the Tattered Cover, which was one of the largest independent largest bookstores, independent bookstores in the world. And I wrote the owner of Tattered Cover and sent her an email. And I said, I lived there for more than 8 years and lost most of my paycheck to you. So I feel it's okay for me to ask a favor. And I've got this book coming out, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Is there a way we could talk and I could get some mentoring from you? And if there's nothing I can do for you, which I did say that, but I knew I couldn't. I said, I promise I will pay it forward to the next person who needs help. And sometimes that's all they want, is to know that you're going to do that favor for the next person who needs it. Because if you're getting help from a CEO, odds are they're pretty much set in the things that you can satisfy, but that you're going to do good by them, they're okay with them. And she not only did phone advice with me and took me to lunch when we went to Denver, but gave me the best signing I ever could have imagined. It was epic. It was a Cinderella moment. And all of that because I asked for help. I have learned you can expand your network while seeking help, because people generally want to do favors, but they don't want to do it when it seems like they are obligated, or they want to know that you're not self-serving about it, that they can help, and that you are humble, and that you're coming to them with a need for assistance, because people like to do favors for other people, but they don't like to help desperate people. Okay, do you agree with that?
I agree that people don't like to help desperate people.
Desperate, you can't have that in even if you are desperate, you can't let it sound desperate. And I got that out of an interview with Frances McDormand, the Academy Award winner. She said the more desperate she was for a role, the less likely she was to get it. So what you're saying?
Well, I was going to say, you're right. I was going to say, just to qualify your word desperate, that doesn't mean you can't have a sense of urgency or you're stressed or anxious because something's sort of happening right now and you need advice. Desperate is like, I think probably what I mean by that is whenever it's like you've kind of lost sight of your values and the relationship and the other person, where it feels like you're desperate and willing to do anything and use anyone to get there.
That, and like, they don't like to know that if you need something and you don't get it, you're going to be starving on the street. That makes people uncomfortable. So you just kind of have to cover that up. Don't seem desperate when you're doing it. You can track almost everyone down. LinkedIn is a good resource, and we'll get to that. But I absolutely prefer email much better because there's so much garbage that comes in your inbox on LinkedIn. And you can figure out people's email addresses by looking at the setup of what the company does for their own emails. And we've talked about this in our customer service episode, where if you're sending an email to someone at Microsoft, well, it's going to be, probably first name, period, last name at Microsoft.com, or first name underscore last name at Microsoft.com. You figure out the format and send it to the person. And be humble, contrite, be grateful, and be brief, because you've got to do it in just really 2 paragraphs. They don't want your whole life story right there. They want to know what you want, how they can help you, and that it's easy. And I learned this a long time ago. If you need somebody's time, it is a lot easier to get it when you're asking for 10 or 15 minutes as opposed to asking for an hour. But often, if you get the 10 or 15 minutes, you wind up getting the hour if they like you. So, okay, I have some notes. I've got this cheat sheet here that I hand out when I'm speaking. So first thing is that networking is not going to kill you. It's not. It may be uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to me. It is very easy for me to go into a room when I'm speaking and I'm going to be the speaker, so everybody comes to me. That's easy peasy. But if I go into a room where I don't know anybody, and I mean even a cocktail party when there are only 10 people, it is exceedingly uncomfortable to me. And I just have to do some of my tricks that make it easier for me to talk to strangers. Okay. Another one of these tips here is you can network virtually, and you can network very well virtually. In fact, probably better because it's easier for people. They just have to go and turn on their computer and sit there for a minute. They don't have to go anywhere. They don't even have to put on pants, right? So you just make your contacts. Well, they should, right? But it's, do not overlook the virtual possibilities. And when COVID happened and the lockdown, people just shut down and they gave up. And I absolutely did the best networking of my life then because I knew everybody was available. And so I would just get on my computer and we'd have little sessions. Well, we've got the cool table, which is a bunch of very high level women. And I knew nobody was doing anything and everybody showed up. So it was easy to do it. It is easy to ask for that. Now, people are sick of long, boring Zoom meetings. So if you're going to do that, just make sure you keep it purposeful, short, know what you're after. When you're doing that, I shouldn't have to tell people this at this point, but I still do. Pay attention to your background. For goodness sakes, I did a meeting with someone who wanted with me, and they had a bin of dirty laundry behind them. That is not the way to create a great impression. So you can do that. And like Michelle said, ask what you can do for them. So this is the whole conversation sounds at first like something you're going to do for them because you have to sound like you're interested in them. You're listening to them. But again, you've got a time consideration. So you got to figure out how you then get them to switch it around to you. Michelle, thoughts on that?
Well, so I'm gonna spend a little. I want to talk about LinkedIn for a minute because I'm going to give some different techniques that I think would work because this process works really good. I think for what you're describing and how you like to engage, I have a different format. So this is the beauty, I think, of our podcast. So LinkedIn is my place. I love it. I have used it for years. I have a kind of, this is my routine, just naturally that I've evolved. Number one, you know how somebody comes to mind, you're reading an article, you're looking at, let's say, LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever your place is, but somebody comes to mind or you see something that someone wrote that you haven't seen in a while. If I see something, I will respond. I will respond to just make an outreach and touch to that person. So just yesterday, I saw that someone that I used to work with just got a promotion. LinkedIn pops it up. I see they get a promotion. Now I can send the auto-generated congrats, or I can say, hey, so-and-so, this is really exciting. I remember when we worked together, you were really good at XYZ. Like, put your heart into something personal to connect with that person.
That's a great point.
9 times out of 10, I will get a DM back. Oh my goodness, direct message back. Great to hear from you. And now we have struck up a conversation. Hey, how's everything going? Family, work, what are you doing? And that little activity, what does it take? 10 or 15 minutes? And you can completely reconnect and bring so much value to someone just because you took a few minutes to be personal, right? And usually in conversations, it'll be, hey, this is a standard question I ask. Hey, tell me something good. Tell me something good. Is there anything I can do to help you with that? I'm excited. Keep me posted. And that little moment may come around once a year, once every 2 years. Some of them are much more frequent. Some of them, it may rekindle a connection that we can grow and help one another. But that is a very easy way where you don't feel like you're taking or you don't feel uncomfortable. You are making a connection to someone you care about.
Okay, but now those are those connections, though, that I say are useful, but they're not usually game changing. I'm going to finish my story, and you can disagree or not, okay? Because a lot of the people who are at higher levels, once you find a way to connect with them personally, you find out they also like pit bulldogs, or that they're cat people, or that they went to school 20 miles from where you went to school, or that they have the same number of kids, or their kids are the same age, or wow, isn't it weird? We both played the flute in the marching band. Whatever it is that you find that you connect personally, you seize on that and use that to begin and grow a friendship. Because I think those are useful contacts, what you're describing. And I'm not minimizing that. But super networking comes from super friendships. And those are not people who are going to show up, if you find out that you have a brain tumor, right? But if you can build a network of people who are influential, who are your tribe, and that they will do anything for you, they will do anything for you.
Yes. But what I'm saying is sometimes those reconnections like that, you would be amazed at the depth that you can get out of that for one another. And even Fawn, I'm going to take it. Let's talk about you and I, because I have another thing about how do I do if I don't know someone that I want to connect with, but I'm going to hold that for a second. But let's talk about the two of us. Here we are 17 years later doing a podcast, and we are the closest of friends. But if you go back and think about our connection and our relationship, you were an upset customer that I helped. We talked. And then from there, over the years, what did we connect? Maybe once or twice a year, maybe.
But
for all those years, but it was personal. But we got personal. And those conversations I mentioned earlier, they get personal too. What's happening with the family? What's happening with you? You're reconnecting and you're sowing a seed. It just may not be somebody I'm talking to every week. It's sowing a seed into that relationship that you keep watering, and you may water it for 20 years.
But we did some heavy duty watering. It's like, remember when we first met, you were in the middle of a bad divorce.
Yes, I
was.
And
you shared all that. And then when everything really changed was, when my parents died and you sent me a plant. And it was like, wow. Something that I don't even like to send sympathy cards, which you should, but they make me sad. And but that one gesture, which as if that was done as a networking attempt, sisters, kudos, because that really got my heart.
But it was a compassion and care because you care about the other person and you want to show up. And I think that's what it's about. It's about letting someone know you see them.
Yeah.
You are there. You are in their circle, but you may not be talking every 2 weeks. It just may be.
I'm going to give you that. I think we're saying the same
we're
thing.
Connecting. Yes, but there's depth. There's depth. So, and those people not only, maybe they have a skill or maybe you don't know it at the time, but over time they may have a skill that you're like, wait, I have this problem. Who do I know that I can reach out to? But they also may not have the skill, but they may know the person that does. So I ask them for help, not because maybe they have the answer, but I bet they'll know how to help me get the answer.
And I'm more of not thinking about that as much until I really need something, and then am really watering these friendships as I go. And early on, when I got involved with the network of executive women, there were a lot of really high level people that I was able to bring into my personal network. And the executive director said, "Why do all these people want to be your friends?" And I said, "I don't know. Maybe they don't have many friends." But the truth is that people, particularly women in high places, don't have a lot of people around them that they can connect with and have. And having that as my tribe has been, that's the whole reward of all this. Anyhow, we can sit on this. I want we're now doing more in-person events, but whether it's in-person or virtual, you absolutely have to be careful by how much alcohol you consume. Even if the other person is the biggest drinker you've ever seen, they're watching how much you're drinking. So that if you are doing a virtual networking event, there is nothing to be gained by getting your drink on in front of them. You may be more comfortable. Don't do it. And if you're out at a networking reception, just nurse that one glass and just make it so that they don't see you doing anything that they're going to judge. Right?
Yeah, here. A good trick is drink. Get like club soda and lime because it feels good to hold and it looks kind of, festive or whatever. But so you and I haven't really talked about this. I 100% agree. I learned a long time ago. I don't drink at work events.
Well, that's smart.
I don't drink at work events. I had a boss tell me once, he said, he literally looks at me and goes, "I'm an alcoholic. Like, I'm not joking. I have cirrhosis. I am an alcoholic.
Oh,
I will
I'd
not."
love to hear that conversation.
Yeah. He goes, "I don't drink at work events because you know what? That smile lasts a little bit longer. You stand a little bit closer." And I mean, that's in a mixed crowd, but even with women, you're looser than you would normally be. And you don't want to give up that, your sense of your own agency about what you're saying, who you're saying it about. And, I'm not saying that you can have that glass of wine, but I agree with if you're going to do that, then milk it. You don't need 3.
And you know that I'm not a very big drinker to begin with, but I am going to tell a story where early in my speaking career, it was a really important event and they had AV issues and they just kept bringing the wine around. And I did not know this rule. I was much younger. And so I had a wine but I had time for a second one. And it was such a big event that it was recorded for posterity. And when I looked at the video, I was drunk. I had 2 drinks. I can't hold it, right? You do not want anyone judging you like, is she slurring? So yeah, don't do it. Don't do it. Okay, now here's another thing, okay? Your handshake. Oh, people.
There's some women that need to hear this.
Okay. And I did a speech once for KPMG, and they had all these people coming through my line. And these were numbers people. And they had the worst handshakes I had ever encountered. It was just like limp fish, right? And I just was like, nope, do it again. Come in, engage, shake. If you are not sure that you have a great handshake, ask somebody, but watch a YouTube on that. You have to have a good handshake. And worse than a wimpy handshake is one that's too tough, okay? So I'm just like, go in there, shake it, be warm, pull it back, right? But you got to study that. You have to make sure your handshake is correct. Have you had experiences with people in all those categories?
Yes. And it's always it's one thing, like where you get especially I think more women as they get more senior, they're kind of learning this, but you'll get that like, I'm holding my hand up to the camera so people see, but you get that like sort of softy little grab your fingers handshake, or this weird like clutch. I don't know. It's awkward and I don't even know what to do with that. And I realize now COVID's changed things for people. So maybe
that's so true.
The fist bump or whatever. Although I will say, I am in Texas and you're in Florida. So we probably are indexed on things are mainly back to normal. But yeah, people are full on. They're full on.
Yeah, there's so much COVID down here. Nobody wants to shake anything.
Well, no, people are shaking hands all over the place. There's no paranoia at this point, even with, anyway, but yeah.
All right. You go to an event. It's intimidating. Like I said, I do not like networking events. If they don't know me, I don't like it. But you don't have to meet every person in the room. You just go in with a goal. And sometimes I say, I'm just going to meet 3 people. Well, then it's very manageable. And you can pre-target who you think is going to be there. Sometimes you meet people and you don't know anything about them, and you can just run in the bathroom and look them up on LinkedIn and figure out who they are and do it that way. Don't have to meet everybody in the room. 3 people is a really good goal. And if you're good at meeting 10, okay. But
so what do you say, Fawn? What's your approach? What do you say when there's somebody across the room?
Well, that's why this is in my last book, a whole chapter on all of this stuff coming back. How to win the job you want when you've lost the job you need. I do a whole chapter on networking like that. And in that, I have a list of awesome networking conversation starters, or as I refer to them, pickup lines that were taken from different websites. So I would love to act like I am so smart that I came up with these, but these have helped me and they will help you. So I'll give you a few, then you chime in. So we have a little break, and then I'll give you some more, because there are a lot of them. But it's not that hard to go up to someone and say, hey, I don't think we've met before. And then say your name.
You're Marie, Michelle. Who are you?
Well, I was going to say I'm Fawn Germer, but I don't want you all to say you're Fawn Germer, because I'm Fawn Germer. Okay. And I've even, this one is always effective. Hi, I don't know too many people here, so I want to introduce myself. I'm Fawn Germer. I'm an author and speaker who's here from Florida or whatever, for whatever reason. So I don't know many people, want to introduce myself. But then some of these are really good. Great shoes or tie or hair or handbag. People love to have their fashion complimented, because ultimately, even if they know they look good, they want to know that you think they look good. And if they don't think they look good, they really want you to tell them they look good. So that always works. Sometimes you can say, hey, I think we both know, and then insert the name. You can say, so what do you do? I am not a big fan of that, because that's so transparent, but you really want to know. So sometimes I can't, me, I'm going to ask it at some point. It's my first time here. I'm trying to meet a few people. Mind if I start with you? I'm Fawn Germer. Or what brings you here today? Now, I like this one. Have you tried the little...
You said it. I totally go back to the pickup line. What brings you here today?
Yeah, right. No. Hey. All right. But have you tried the little egg rolls? Wow. Right. But here's one I like. I can't stop eating these meatballs. Have you tried them? There was one, and I don't see this in there. It was like, I'm sorry, the only person I know here is the bartender. What's your name? But, something happened to me at an event last week, and I'm curious for your take on this. We ended up at a large dinner, and there were probably 20 people around a long table. And I ended up in that seat where the conversation went, the person next to me to the left and the person right of me to the right, and nobody is talking to me. Mm-hmm. And and this is not one of those moments where they are all in a hurry to meet me. I mean, it's just, I'm one of this group.
You're just stuck in the middle, awkward spot.
I'm sitting there. I have no one to talk to. And this went on for 5 minutes, and I'm getting angry at that point, because I think, why isn't anybody talking to me? The people across from me were talking to themselves. I mean, it's literally, I'm all by myself. And then finally I'm like, okay, you either need to do one of two things. Go home or you need to stop this. And so I just tapped the woman next to me and I said, hey, I happen to be in that unenviable position of the conversation's either going that way or that way, but there is no conversation here. So do you mind if I barge in and join your conversation? And they laughed, and it was a great conversation starter. And one of them said there was an episode on Curb Your Enthusiasm about such a thing. But you have to take charge of it. You have to take charge of it because all those uncomfortable moments, you can tell people, I'm not comfortable. Can you help me? I went one time, this is not a networking event, but it was the Christmas bicycle ride in my town here of Dunedin. And we had to decorate all of our bikes with our Christmas lights. And the two friends who said they were coming, it was a married couple, they bailed at the last minute. And the bike was all decorated. So I thought, well, I'm going to go. And I went, and then we get to the dinner. I don't know anybody at that event. And so I went up to this one table. It was filled with people. I said, hey, I got to tell you, my friends bailed on me and I'm a real introvert. Do you mind if I join your table? And now we're all friends years later.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh,
so
yeah.
sometimes you just have to come right out and say it. Right.
Because you think people are, because this is what the self-talk is, right? People will think, oh, they're excluding me. And then you sort of go into your little shell. And it's not that. People are they're just focused on what's in front of them. And that's a different conversation. So especially when they're in that type of environment, they're obviously there to meet people. So I love what you said about how you engaged.
And this goes to something, and I brought it up before, but I didn't hit it hard enough. And I speak about this all the time. People like to help people. They like to do favors because it makes them feel good about themselves. And if you ask them to help you with this uncomfortable situation, they get to feel good about themselves. And so that is kind of like you're doing them a favor by letting them do you a favor. Now,
well, I was going to say a little bit about some of my entry lines if I'm at an event.
Yeah, let's hear.
But I may walk in, not really know anyone. And like you, if I'm speaking, I'm very comfortable owning the room, like to meet and greet people. But when I don't have that role and I'm just a guest, I get kind of flustered, intimidated. But a couple of things that work for me. So I may see someone, how you're drawn to certain people, like you may notice someone they walk in or whatever. So I may say, I noticed you earlier and I just felt like I need to come over and introduce myself. My name is Michelle. Tell me a little bit. How long have you been part of this? What's been your favorite thing? What are you enjoying about it? What do I need to know about this group? Or, those types of things, because then you sort of open the door to this very broad, open-ended question where you've immediately hit on something that they're going to be passionate about, and they will have a lot to say. And then all you have to do from there is just sort of, oh, tell me more about that, and peppering in, as they're talking to engage. And you can glean so much information, and it helps you then decide, where do you want to share and open up more about you, right? But it's just giving you time to really figure out back to where are those connection points where we have some things in common, because you're just digging a little bit into a little bit about who they are.
Now, but sometimes when you do this, sometimes you meet this person who gloms onto you and will not let you go, right? And you're trapped. And it's not who you want to be talking to. So I do have some lines on how to extract yourself from a conversation like that. So it's like, well, it's been so good to talk. How might I help you in the future? Because you're letting them know we're done now, right? Or it's nice to meet you. It seems like we have a lot in common. Can I send you a LinkedIn invitation? Or I've really enjoyed meeting you. I'd really enjoy getting together for lunch. Are you game? That's if you really want to have lunch. Time for me to go get some food now that the lines died down. It was really great meeting you. And I'd enjoy talking with you again. Can I get your V card? Something like that. The other thing is sometimes when you're meeting people, you have to barge into a group. And that is different than saying, I like the meatballs. So you just want to go up to a group And you just say, I just wanted to join in here and introduce myself. Or, hi, everyone. Do you mind if I squeeze in? I'm Fawn Germer. Hi, room for one more? And then after you break the ice, you can keep the conversation going with something you read. I just read that, or I can't stay late. I got to get home to watch such and such on TV. And then, oh, here's one. The last time I went to one of these events, I came home and my dog had, and then fill in the blank, because people love stories about their dogs. So there are a lot of things you can do to make this effective. The one thing that you must do is figure out after you meet somebody how you're going to continue the relationship. And you want their email address. You want to write them. You do not want to become their pen pal or their pest. You know, Michelle was talking about sometimes she's only doing it once or twice a year, which is good because they remember her. She's not a bother. Sometimes you need more contact than that, but do not start messaging somebody every week unless they are messaging you every week. That is not cool. Thoughts?
Agreed. So one of the things that I also will do is, again, if you don't want to be that pest, is, let's say, again, I'm going to go back to LinkedIn because that's typically my spot. But if I see someone commenting or posting, or they present an article, then maybe I engage on that article. So I don't need to need to go private message, but I'm making a connection. Again, I'm following you, I'm connected, I see something. And then it's interesting how just, again, that is a way where you maintain, when it's not offensive. I know when people do that to me, I'm like, oh, and I may send a note, thanks for sharing that, or thanks for following up. How are things? Again, it initiates an easy doors opening for us to make that connection again. Or how are things going since the last time I saw you at that event or that dinner party? I thought about you, hadn't reached out. Whatever happened with that, whatever we were talking about, tell me the latest there. Is that going well? Those are ways that you can continue to keep conversation happening, even if it's on an infrequent basis.
Right. And then be mindful that the best networking is almost always accidental. LinkedIn is great. You can target people, you can write them, but I have had connections with some of the greatest benefactors by sitting next to them on an airplane. One of them, my favorite one was, I was in Boston and I had been on the road a long time and I needed my nails done. And the woman sitting across from me, we're just talking about the things you say when you're getting your nails done in Boston. And then I asked her, I said, isn't there a Macy's around here? And she's go, oh, let me walk you. And then at some point she says, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm a motivational speaker. I'm here to speak at the, Women's Leadership Conference. And she goes, oh, wow. She goes, I'm senior vice president at State Street Financial. We have a women's leadership program. And then months later, I was speaking at that program because she had her nails done and sat across from me. And because I talked to strangers like that. Now that may sound like I'm more bold about things than, after having described myself as an introvert. But the truth is that I do enjoy people a great deal and I like their stories. So that's always easier for me when it's not work related, when, it's just non-threatening. But those people are everywhere. I became connected with an extremely influential executive in the financial services industry. Very big shot. She's been in 2 of my books because I was on the shuttle at the airport and I started talking to this man and he asked me what I did and I told him about my books and he goes, oh, my daughter should be in your books. And he introduces me to his daughter, who is somebody who should be in my books, who was one of the most really powerful, probably, and if Fortune had 100 people instead of 50, she would have been in that 100. Just because I was talking to her father on the shuttle and we're friends now. So talk to strangers. And here's something I have to work with all of you on, that at least I don't have to learn to deal with this, is don't automatically convey power and respect beyond your level to people, even if they are very powerful. I was a reporter, and I know people think reporters are all a bunch of rude people, and that's not what we're talking about. What I'm talking about is that as a reporter, I was able to ask hard questions, whether somebody was a U.S. senator or a janitor. It didn't matter. I can talk to anybody. Don't act like these people are so much greater than you. Because if you have to do that, it's not going to be a connection that's going to be of any real use to you. And people relate to people who just don't get all gaga-eyed just because they have a big name or a big title. You just relate to people as human beings. They're just like you are. You know, your mom would say they put on their pants in the morning one leg at a time. But the truth is, they have problems with their kids. They have health issues. They have many of the same problems that you do. And they may not have anybody to vent about that with. You know, it's just go at it. One time when I was a reporter, I got sent to cover a Weight Watchers meeting because Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, remember Fergie? This is before she was quite so controversial, but she was there at a meeting. And so I'm sitting there with Fergie, and I'm not going to ask her the same questions everybody asks, because what good is that? But I leaned over to her and I said, you know, Bette Midler does this routine about the queen and her purse and says, you know, why does the queen need a purse? What's she put in there? Bus money? Right. So I said, what's in your purse? And she's pulling out, she goes, oh, cookie, hairbrush, tampon, right? She's pulling all of this stuff out. And we laughed, and we had an hour, and we just laughed like friends, because everyone else she meets or met at that time,
her.
yeah, right, they put her on the pedestal. And I just talked to her like a human being. So to those of you who are listening, you are as good or better than anyone else in this world. You have to believe that and know that. I know that about you. You have to know that about yourself, because once you realize that you can talk to anybody as an equal, you can do a lot more with your networking. And then the last thing I want to say is a network is worthless if you cannot leverage it. So you at some point have to be able to tell your friends, I need you to do this for me. I need this phone call. And they will do it. That's what friends do, right?
Yes.
So a network is of no use if you can't ask for favors. And I did one event, and they said, hey, and this was in Philadelphia. I live in Dunedin, Florida. They are asking me to invite 4 big shots in Philadelphia to their event. And I said, well, do you know these people? Yeah. And I said, well, why don't you invite them? Well, I don't know them like that. And so I did. But I always remembered that, because what good is that network if you don't know someone enough to say, hey, we're doing this. We'd love it if you could come. And that comes by nurturing a relationship. And that starts with, you know, commenting on somebody's shoes or the meatballs, and then following up with a friendly email, staying in touch, but keeping it somewhat personal so they feel invested in you as a human being.
Yeah. Well, I love that advice. I mean, like, I'm so blessed with an incredible network. I invest in the relation. I mean, to the point, I mean, the takeaway is I invest in the relationship, and I'm confident when I need help, they are going to show up. But they also know when they need help, I'm going to bust my tail to step in and do everything in my power to help support them. And I mean, you know, even with the two of us, right? I mean, there's been multiple times where you've, you know, been able to reach out where I could personally help you or share my network with you to help move you forward, right? And I love being able to do it.
That's a really good example. That's a good example of trying to figure out how to do this without insulting some people. But I needed some blurbs for my book, some endorsements. And I said to my people, I said, hey, can you get me some? And the only person who turned them in were Michelle. And she sent me tons of them. And so you got to have your people. You got to have your people. Now, those people, when I need other things, they do step in. But I think this was something that probably entailed a little bit of effort, and they didn't do it. So,
and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for that. And that's one of the things, just going back again, I always say is I always kind of close with someone after we have an interaction of, I am here for you. So again, I'm in your corner. I'm here to support you. If there's anything you need, please, please do not hesitate to reach out. And when they do, and they have my number, they know they can text me, and I'm going to prioritize that. I'm going to prioritize it. And like I say, you've got to put in some work for it. And it's not for what am I going to get back? It's a matter of what is it I can give to make this person's life a little bit better? And then that brings me joy.
And knowing Michelle like I do, that's all genuine. So when you can do that and bring something to the table and be genuine about it, the return is going to be genuine. So I think we've talked about a lot here. The bottom line being, stop networking like a wimp. Use those good conversation starters to get into conversations. You don't have to network the whole room. You can do it virtually.
Mm-hmm.
There is everything to be gained by doing it in a way that builds a friendship more than a business relationship. So look to do that. And let us know. Write to us. We love hearing your own stories and your comments. And don't forget to like and share this with everybody else. Michelle, you have anything else we need to tell everybody?
I say just get out there, get a little bit uncomfortable, but look at it as a way that you can help serve others instead of feeling like you're taking from somebody else.
Fantastic. All right, people, we'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining the Hard-Won Wisdom Podcast with best-selling author Fawn Germer and corporate innovator Michelle Brigman. Join us weekly for career and life-changing conversations with some of today's most influential thought leaders, senior executives, and trailblazers who will share their mentoring wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Leadership Network. Visit hardwonwisdom.com for more on this podcast and for links to Fawn and Michelle's web pages and social media. Also, be sure to rate, subscribe, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort, and we'll see you next week.